My name's Christopher Ritzcovan. I'm the winemaker and the vineyard supervisor at Jefferson Vineyards. It's a combination of the two, of science and art. You have to monitor your sugar levels, your pH, your total acidity to kind of understand the balance and what kind of wine you're going to get out of it. The wine starts in the vineyard, always does. You can't make good wine out of bad grapes. So quality fruit comes first, and it was a tough year for a lot of people with all the rain, but we have a great vineyard staff, and they've really helped on maintaining canopies and keeping a lot of the issues out.
So how do you do you just eyeball the grapes, or do you taste them? Is tasting them like kicking a car's tire?
Well, we do berry samples. We sample once the fruit starts to ripen during veraison. We'll take samples about twice a week. Veraison is when it starts changing colors, and then it really starts picking up those Chardonnay sort of notes. And then you keep an eye on the sugar levels and the pH, and the sugar will give you a potential alcohol content at a certain point. You can have too little alcohol if you pick too soon, and that's when people make champagne out of grapes like these. But we're not looking to do that. We want, our Chardonnay is typically around 13% alcohol, 12.5 to 13% alcohol. So we keep an eye on it. We have a lot of wildlife pressure, so you want to keep the rot out, you want to keep the birds away, and then you have to taste the berries and see if they have those Chardonnay sort of potential Chardonnay flavors that you're looking for, and make sure the fruit is fully ripe.
Is this a stressful job?
Yes. It's a stressful job. You have to monitor the weather. I check the weather like 5 times a day. Things are always changing, weather patterns, especially this time of year. We haven't had any of the hurricanes or tropical depressions show up yet, which is nice. In 2011 it rained for pretty much all of September, and that was a challenging winemaking year. But
what does that do? I mean,
lots of rain can lead to lower sugar levels. The plants pick up all that moisture from the ground, and it dilutes the sugar contents. So it takes longer for ripening. If the berries are close to ripening, they can start bursting with all the uptake of water. And when you have compromised skins, that can lead to bacterial infections, yeast, wild yeast or bacteria can come in, mildews, and start causing the fruit to rot.
So let's talk about you for a little while.
Sure.
So how did you get into? How do you take this course in life here?
It was a long and winding road. I went to UVA, which is how I ended up down in Charlottesville, and I studied urban planning and environmental science. So I have a little bit of chemistry background, and I always wanted to be a landscape architect. But before I went to grad school for that, I worked here as the assistant winemaker about 6 years ago. And after 3 years in studio, I missed it and kind of begged for my old job back, and worked as the assistant winemaker for a few years, which was along the lines of an apprenticeship. I was involved in everything, start to finish, pruning a little bit, picking fruit, pressing fruit, taking care of everything in the winery, preparing for bottling. And I guess I had some early exposure. My dad makes wine at home and in the basement, and he's been doing that my whole life. My grandfather was an amateur horticulturalist, so he was always grafting fruit trees, and it's a lot of little things I've always been exposed to, and can't fight nature, I guess. So I enjoy it. This is I live on the property, so this is essentially my backyard, and it's not so bad. It's not a bad office.
That was actually one of my questions. What's in your backyard?
Well, like I said, I live on the property and we have 25 acres of grapes. And my backyard, my specific backyard, I have my little garden and I have some chickens and then all of this.
Nice. What's your favorite place?
My favorite place? Actually, this is one of my favorite places. From the top of the mountain, you get a nice view looking out down south on the county. And since I live here, there's times when I don't leave for like a week, for a week at a time. And I really enjoy living here. It's a nice property with the views and work. And you know, I have my little garden, my chickens. So got like my little some food coming in here and there. And yeah.
So what is this leading to for you? Where do you want to end up?
I would say I'm right where I want to be at this point. For the time being, I'd probably say I'm doing exactly what I want to do.
So does it taste, when people taste the wine here, do they then look to, do they look to the winemaker, or what do they look to? I mean, when people say, well, the Jefferson wine, they had a good year, or it's a good bottle this year. Is that you, or what is that?
That's obviously not where it starts. It starts in the vineyard. It starts with the fruit. We grow a lot of our varietals, but we also source some of our fruit too from other growers in Virginia. So it starts there, and then it you know, I kind of nurture it through its fermentation and its aging process. But it's a collective effort from everyone that works here. They didn't sell the wine. You know, from Hector in the vineyard to me in the winery, and all the help that we bring in, and I mean, you need a sales team on top of that to keep it viable. So
were you here? You were here last year, right?
Yeah, I was here last year.
So last year was a tough year, huh?
No.
It wasn't a tough year.
No, 2012 was okay.
Was a tough
2011 was a more difficult year. It rained. It rained. I think Hurricane Irene and some tropical offshoots came up, and it rained most of September. Our Pinot Gris came in the end of August when it rained for almost like 5 weeks straight. So that was a tough year. This year, we had a late frost on May 12th that didn't really affect us too much. And we had a lot of early season rain, rain during flowering and during fruit set. So some varietals, if it rains while they're flowering, they don't pollinate correctly, so you get lower yields. Chardonnay did great, looks beautiful. And then we had rain throughout the growing season, which can lead to a lot of mildew issues. And so you have to carefully manage your canopy, which means allowing proper airflow through the vines, pulling shoots off, pulling leaves off, and having a pretty good fungicide spray regimen. And we were able to fight most of those pressures, but there's always wildlife. There's stink bugs. Cicadas came around this year too, and so they caused some stress.
I forgot about those. Yeah.
Yeah, they came out and they actually lay eggs in the vines and the thin shoots, and they can cause some scarring and cause the shoots to die. I'm trying to look for some. This is cicada damage right here. They lay their eggs in the vines and some of the younger wood, and this healed, but sometimes if it's a younger vine, the rest of the shoot might die. So some of our younger vines that we planted last year took a little hit, and it'll take longer for them to start producing fruit.
What's the history you know of this place?
The history of Jefferson Vineyard started in the early 80s in 1981. Gabriele Rousey, he's pretty well known in the Virginia wine world. He came in as, I want to say, the farm manager, and we run cattle, and there used to be orchards and a full working farm, and he came in and started planting a vineyard. The current owner's grandfather contracted him to do that, and he started growing vines in 1981, and he was actually doing it as a nursery. He was planting vineyards, grafting vines, and one of the earliest people to do it. I think the Virginia wine industry really started in the late 70s. And after about 3 years, once the vines were mature and started to produce fruit, they built a winery and started making wine. After that, it was originally known as Simeon Vineyards. The name changed in the 90s to Jefferson Vineyards. Part of that is due to our historic location. Monticello is right down the road, and some of the property that the owners own was originally leased out to Filippo Mazzei, who was granted land by Thomas Jefferson pre-Revolutionary War to start a vineyard. And I think it's difficult to say. It's not that we planted vines directly on the site where he tried growing grapes, but along the same property, so hence the Jefferson Vineyards. And if you notice on our signature series, it's kind of a tribute to Thomas Jefferson, and we like to think that we're sort of helping to fulfill his dream of producing quality wines in the United States and in Virginia, close to where he was originally trying to do that.
Was he wasn't successful though growing wines?
He wasn't successful. He tried growing.
Could you maybe say Jefferson wasn't successful, Yeah.
He wasn't successful at growing the varietals that he was trying to grow. He was growing European vinifera, and he had to combat all the things we have to: late frost, high humidity, lots of rain, hurricane seasons, and he doesn't have the agricultural technology that we have today, and he wasn't successful. And then I think the Revolutionary War kind of put a damper on things after that. But he tried. It didn't work out. But they've replanted vineyards up at Monticello around his property. The same vineyard style, the same layouts, using all the older technologies and the older canopy management systems. So we're just kind of trying to follow Jefferson's dream and make quality wine. A lot of people think Virginia is only about fruit wines and berry wines, but we've been growing vinifera for about 30 years, and it's come a long way.
What is it? Seems like a lot of people have jumped on the bandwagon.
Yeah, in the past few years, I think we now have almost 220 wineries in the state, and I think that number's doubled since I first started maybe 6 years ago, something like that. I don't know if it's part of the locavore movement or something combined that with the microbrewery movement that kind of got things started a few years ago, and people are just kind of, I think that broadened people's awareness of palate sensitivity and quality beverages, and it's kind of moved on towards wine and hard alcohol as well.